Good evening, this is John from RVA Katana in Richmond, Virginia. And coming on YouTube tonight, just because I can. And very happy to answer questions about swords, to show swords that we have here, which I don't have a whole lot of. Yeah, very happy to answer any questions if anyone ever turns up. So what I have here is an Osuraku Wakazashi. This is from Legacy Blades. We actually have this in scabbards of 3 different colors, saya in 3 colors: the gold, Ishime black, and a crimson, like a crimson gloss. It's an interesting looking color, very pretty actually. But what's really impressive about this blade is the blade itself. It is just a massive Wakazashi, very mean looking sword. It's one of my favorite ones that I like to show around. So anyway, what else do we have here? Another thing that we have a lot of, for those of you who like Demon Slayer, we have a crap ton of wooden anime swords, and we are trying to get rid of them because there are currently 1,000 sitting in my foyer of my house, and my wife wants them gone. So we are selling several of these for, hey, Michael Kegel, by the way. We're selling these for like $35 for some of them, 50 for other ones. But this is the Gyu sword, for those of you who have watched Demon Slayer. This is actually the newer version. It's blue, so I think it's a pretty cool one. But it's wood, so you don't have to worry about cutting yourself, and you can still do your techniques with them as well. It's kind of lightweight, but you can still have fun with it. You can go to cosplay conventions and hang out with some cosplay people. But yeah, check out our website, rvakatana.com. I think it's a Gyu, Rengoku, Tanjiro's swords. They're all on sale for $35. And if you get multiples, then the price starts to drop down. So what's up? Yeah, Space Ghost. What has been going on? I had a really big day. Hey, Steve. I thought you were watching the movie on the Discord. But anyway, no, I was hanging out at the shop today. We were really busy. Let's see. I love the Moritaka Jade Dragonfly. I hope to purchase soon. Yeah, it's a gorgeous sword. We don't have many of them. Very beautiful sword, though. Highly recommend it. That Tsuba is very unique. I had never seen that Tsuba before. But yeah, once again, for those of you who are looking for plastic anime sword, plastic components, but a wooden blade. And once again, you can see it's not sharp. You can have all kinds of fun with it. You can hit yourself with it, and it's not going to hurt yourself. And so you can take it to conventions, and you can practice. If you wanted to, you could practice your drawing techniques and not have to worry about it. So anyway, so we have several. So please, if you ever wanted an anime sword, if you wanted to get one for your friends or family for Christmas, help me, because seriously, my wife is probably on the verge of divorcing me because there are literally 1,000 wooden anime swords sitting in my house, in my front. Yeah. Let's see. The Sun Moon Katana is killer. Love the fittings. Oh, Space Ghost is Shandon. Yeah, right. Space Ghost. That Sun Moon, that particular one is because I actually had to choose a color for it. So for those of you who don't know, go to rvakatana.com and look up the Sun Moon Katana. And that is like one of the most beautiful swords I've ever designed, if I do say so myself. But it was a very custom color on the side. It was a very silvery color to it. So anyway, join me when I'm broadcasting from the shop. We have a lot more things to show. What I have here are the antique swords, like the really expensive antique swords. I want to get Sokka's meteorite sword for my son. So, Michael, we have it in wood, actually. We have a wooden version, and then we have this one. This is our high-end version. This is a black Damascus steel version. It's not exactly like Sokka's sword, but it is still pretty cool. But it has a black blade to it, and you really can't see it in the camera, but it has folded steel into it. Folded steel, which is colored black. So it's a really cool Han Dynasty style Jian. So this is the expensive version with brass fittings. And then we have a not so expensive version. This is this carbon steel version, which is actually, the other one had an ebony scabbard. This one actually has just a regular painted black scabbard, and it is a carbon steel blade, which is black. So once again, for fans of Avatar: Last Airbender, this is Sokka's sword. And we also have it in wood as well. The wooden one looks just like this in terms of fittings. Oh, let's see. New to your channel, I sub because I caught some of your shorts videos and I respect the knowledge and you have and share. Huh? Yeah. Thank you. I try to. Well, I share things that are interesting to me. I share things as I learn them. Like today, I found out there was actually a commenter who taught me this that the kinoto, these were the swords that were favored by partisan samurai in the Edo period, are straighter. So this is a kinoto, and this one's about 200 years old. And one of the things you'll notice is that it's a pretty straight sword. There is a slight curvature to it, but it is slightly straight. And I just found out today the reason for that was that kendo was becoming popular in the Edo period. So a lot of these samurai were used to using straighter swords, and so that's why they chose these straight swords. And so you see a lot of the Bakamatsu period swords, whether the kinoto or the other swords, are a little on the straighter side. So here, right here, this is actually a Satsuma era sword. This one came from the Satsuma Rebellion. This is when samurai, it's basically the last samurai story where the samurai felt like they were getting persecuted, so they had to fight against the central government. And so this is one of the swords that was probably used during that time. But you can see, same thing, it's a long, straight, wide sword. So I think it's a pretty cool detail there. Yeah, so both of these swords I just held out there, these are about 200, both of these are about 150 years old, give or take. Actually, a little more than 150 to 175-year-old swords, Edo period. And they are long. So if you see this compared to a modern day production sword, so I'm going to hold out our $70 gold plum here. You can see lengthwise how much longer this what do you call it? This is the kinoto is compared to a modern day production sword. And also the fittings are a little bigger as well. You can see that in terms of the size, the fittings are probably an extra like half a centimeter or extra centimeter wider in diameter. So once again, that is a kinoto and a Satsuma sword, both end of Tokugawa era swords. What did you miss, Outlaw Samurai? Nothing really. Nothing really at all. John's wealth of knowledge of Japanese history. I try. Once again, I try. The things that really interest me are societies in transition. So, for example, the end of the Qing dynasty in China, the end of the Tokugawa era in Japan, and like the warring state period in Japan. So these are societies that are in huge transition with conflicts. I'd never expected to live in that kind of society, but I'm very interested in studying them in the past. Let's see. What's up, Outlaw? Oh, Space. Okay. What's the flimsy sword? I don't know. Were you asking about this one, the flimsy sword? This is a wooden sword from Demon Slayer. I don't know if this is what you're talking about, being a flimsy sword, but it's actually pretty buff for a wooden sword. So I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to. Oh. Anyway, here's another one of the cool things that we have for those of you who like buff swords. This is a Osaraku style wakazashi. And we have like this in like a crimson and also an Ishime black look to it as well. But check out the blade on this. This blade is massive. It's 40 centimeters wide. Sorry, 40 centimeters. 40 millimeters wide. Has that really nasty stabbing tip. This is definitely one of my favorite swords that in our shop right now. And it's also, I've cut mats with this. It just went through mats like they were nothing. It is just kind of screwed up there, right? But here we are. It's a pretty sharp sword. But yeah, and I've already cut mats with this particular one. That's got to be an incredible cutter. Yeah, it cuts really, really nicely. And once again, this is the first time I ever cut one-handed with a sword before, minus a Viking sword now I think about it. But we were cutting through mats. It was just going right through the mats. It was just absolutely insane how easy it was to cut with this thing. Love that geometry, yeah. Technically, this much of it is a stabbing tip. Technically, should be a stabbing tip, and yet here we are. We were using it to cut with. Osaraku, it is based on a style of tanto that came about during the Koto period, so maybe about 500 years ago. And what it was that the first smith who made it, he engraved the term osoraku into it. And osaraku means like kind of scary or frightening. So yeah, I think this is a pretty scary, frightening sword here. Is there a budget version of the osaraku? Outlaw Samurai. I am trying to get Heaven and Earth to make one. But no, sadly there is nothing under $500 that I know of. Well, we sell this for $475 without, if it doesn't have the, oh, this one doesn't have the engraving. If it doesn't have the engraving, we sell it for $475. Let's see. What is the price on the lower cost steel Saka sword? Michael Keegan, that's $200. It's a $200 sword. And you can find it on our website, rvakatana.com, and just look under Saka sword and you'll find it. I really like the triangle. I love these triangle heads of Wakizashi. I'm kind of a big fan of these guys. So now here, this is actually, once again, the bigger brother. This is an antique version of that. This is also a 150, 200-year-old sword here. So let's see. I may be calling you come tax season for one. Awesome. So you can see here, same thing. It has that Yokote line here. But this is a small little tanto. And once again, this is an antique. About 200, maybe 150, 200 years old, Edo period. Anime swords are just samurai swords. Anime or just samurai? I'm not sure what you're asking, Corey Head, but we do have both. Actually, I'm at home right now, but at the shop we have anime swords, we have antique swords, we have practitioner grade swords. We're kind of like, whatever people want, we're going to try to bring it in. Swords make people happy. We're not going to be snobby. There are certain people who are very snobby about their swords, and they're like, oh, well, that one's just a wall hanger, or whatever. But I mean, I don't know, whatever makes you happy. I think people who like Nihonto, like antique swords, they tend to look down on any type of modern day production sword. A lot of the people who practice production swords look down on the anime swords, and the anime people just don't give a crap. And I think that's a really healthy mentality. It's whatever makes you happy. We live in this world where everyone's so judgmental. I think if the pandemic taught me anything, it's like, life is short. Whatever makes you happy, as long as it's not hurting anybody else, I'm not going to criticize you for it. Well, I might be making fun of you in my head, but I don't say it out loud anymore like I would have maybe 5-10 years ago. Let's see. Check out this one here. This is one of my favorites. This is a wakizashi that was made from a nagamaki, and nagamaki were these pole arms. Actually, they were basically like a katana with a very long, broad head and a long handle. And so this one was probably much longer before, but then it was cut down to create a wakizashi. But I really just love how the head of this sword is just like, wow, right there in your face. That would be a great short sword for you, Outlaw. Yeah. Are there straight Japanese swords? Yes, they are called chokuto, depressed hippie. Chokuto. And in fact, I'm actually getting a 500-year-old one fairly soon. I'm sorry, about a 400-year-old one fairly soon. Just waiting for the exit permit for them to ship it from Japan. Yeah. But yeah, the Japanese sword is called a chokuto. And earlier I was showing this. This is not straight. This does have a slight curvature to it, but next to very little curvature. So I'm going to put it on my midline so you can see that by the time it reaches my nose, it's just a little bit off to my nose. So this kind of sword was favored by, these were common once you get to the late Edo period. It's these more straighter. They still have a slight curve to them, but they are a little straighter. And once again, I just learned that they were straighter because a lot of the samurai at the time were practicing kendo. They were sparring with kendo, so they wanted a more straighter sword that was similar to what they were sparring with. Messed up my mead. Oh, that can't be good. I mean, mead. I've never actually had mead before. So, what sword from your collection are you grabbing in a zombie apocalypse? And what would be a great short sword for me? I was desecrated typing. You were desecrated. Oh my gosh. Okay, so for me in a zombie apocalypse, I am going to be going for this is an S5 shock steel sword. S5 is basically shock steel. They use it to break up concrete. They use it for a high impact die. So this particular steel is just super tough. And if you look up Shad Diversity here on YouTube, he tested one of our S5 katana, and he was hitting it up against rock like a stone, and he was chipping the stone, but the blade was totally fine. So this is probably the kind that I would go for. It would be an S5 sword. Maybe not. This is a hand and a half sword. This is not. I'm not really trained in hand and a half, so I probably wouldn't go for this one. I mean, I would just because it is like the toughest sword that I have. But yeah. Anyway, let's see. Good to know I'm not the only one drinking. Distracted, not dedicated. Oh, dedicated. My eyes are really bad, so they've gotten worse. That's the worst part about turning 50 was, well, actually 49 was my eyes going. So yeah, an S5. This is an S5 hand and a half sword. I also have an S5 arming sword. So you were asking about a short sword, and this is a Cloudhammer S5 arming sword here. And so this is a one-handed arming sword. And this is a loaner. We loan this to to HEMA competitions for cutting. And we only loaned it to one so far. It was the Queen's Gambit in Charlotte. And the person who won the arming sword competition used this one. So, let's see. I thought you were like 30. Ha ha ha. I wish. No. my my oldest kid is 19. My youngest kid is 17. So, just got into college. I'm very happy for her. If you're into S5 swords, this is the Chinese Qianlong Emperor sword. And so this one is also made of S5 shock steel. Really, for gaudy fittings like this, I actually prefer to have like traditional Damascus and stuff like that. But this is still pretty cool. Check out the spine of this sword. It's like a dragon tail. I think it's pretty cool. And look at that double fuller. Look at how that double fuller ends in a single fuller. I think it's like super ridiculously cool. Let's see. Reaper 3426. Do you have any functional replica swords? Yes. I don't have any here. But at the shop, we have replicas for like One Piece, Demon Slayer, Bleach, Naruto, Ghost of Tsushima, Kenshin, or Samurai X. So yeah, we have a lot of replicas. Yamato, we have the Yamato from Devil May Cry. So we have a lot of replicas in shop. I just don't, they're not my thing, so I don't keep them here at home. No. But hey, more power to you if you like your anime swords. I actually do have I have some wooden anime swords here. This is the one from One Piece, the Sandai Kitetsu from One Piece. But this is a wooden version of it, so super lightweight. Don't have to worry about cutting yourself because it's a super lightweight sword. And it is not sharp, it is made of wood. And so, yeah. It's kind of fun. You can practice your drawing and sheathing if you want to. But this is, once again, a wooden sword. We're selling this one, I think, for 50, but if you get more than one, the prices start to drop, like 80 for 2 and 100 for 3 or something like that. So if you're looking for wooden anime swords and you want to give them to your friends and family, go to rvakatana.com and look it up for us. I'm not a fan of the Chinese sword made of S5. The only thing is the length of that habaki. Yeah, so that's just it's a replica. That's a replica of the Qianlong Emperor sword. That's just what he liked. I think it's really cool. Once again, for me, it's all about looks for these swords. But even so, here's a Ming Dynasty style sword right here. And check out this one. If maybe you like Chinese swords if you see something like this. So this is a Yanling Dao. Also very pretty because of all the hardware. This particular scabbard, this entire sword is like 5 pounds because the scabbard has so much brass on it. And then this is the one that everyone likes. This is like a Ming Dynasty style sword. This is a Ming Changdao. These were actually modeled slightly off of Japanese swords. So during the 1600s, Japanese, or 15 and 1600s, Japanese pirates would raid the South China Sea, and many of them would use like katana, and many fell into Chinese hands. And so they started modeling some swords after it. This is similar to one of those that you would see. Let's see, my favorite sword. In general, or here in the house, or where do you, that's a very broad question. Check out the tip of this guy. This is made of functional Damascus, step Damascus. Check out that triangle termination of the bohi. But see how the rest of the bohi comes in and goes all the way to the tip? And then see how the bohi originates there. I love this sword. The other cool thing about this Ming Dynasty style sword is that it is a rectangular shape here. So, the only thing I don't like about the swords is the fittings. I kind of like gaudy fittings on my Chinese swords. I like gaudy fitting on my Japanese swords as well. I like things that are pretty. So, let's see. I like Dao Dao and Miao Dao. Like LK Chen's Crossbowman's Dao. Yeah, Alba, I think you always asked about like the Tachi and stuff like that. So those are really, yeah, if you like the big Odachi, you probably like a Miao Dao. Those are also pretty big. Hello, sword. Halo sword. If you're asking if we have a sword from Halo, I didn't even know. I don't play Halo, so I don't know. I didn't even know there was a sword involved. But I'll take your word for it. I also have lots of over here. If you like big, long swords, this is the Odachi Tachi wall. Odachi and Tachi. You can see how long that guy is. It's a huge, big sword. So that particular one is made of Sup 12 spring steel. Very tough. That is the long one. Hey, Mara. I thought, weren't you watching the video in the Hangout on Discord? I thought there was a whole group of them there. Let's see. Favorite sword in my collection. So, I would have to say this one is my favorite because I like things that are old, long, and very curved, and also a little bit different. This is a tachi from Japan. It is at least 650 years old and possibly 800 years old. It has a very deep curvature to it. And so it's 82 and a half centimeters long, Nagasa, so we're talking what, about 33 inches, 32 and a half, 33 inches. So it's a very big, long tachi. And so you really cannot see the detail in the sword with this camera, but the folded steel pattern is just gorgeous. Hey, Tengu, John Smicka in the house. I mean, put a 15-inch ska on my cold steel warrior Okatana. I like big swords and I cannot lie. Let's see. Yeah, we're on the hangout watching Lone Wolf and Cub. Yeah, people. If one of you awesome people could post our Discord link, RVA Katana does have a Discord where people can hang out, talk about swords, share their swords. So this is my favorite, and this is my second favorite right here. This one is potentially 1,000 years old, not the fittings, but the actual blade itself is about 1,000 years old. 600 years, what is the advantage of having such a curved blade? Well, those particular swords were used from horseback. And so when you're using them from horseback, and usually one-handed, is number one, you need to reach people who are lower than you if you were fighting someone who's on the ground. And number two, the curve of it would help create a much more of a slice. So, think Halo sword, I meant Hayabusa's katana from Halo 3. Yeah, I don't play Halo 3, so I couldn't answer that. I'm sorry. Can you compare your smallest to your biggest sword? Smallest. This one might count as smallest just because it is it is very thin. This is called a thin, slender tachi. So it is very, very narrow. And so you can see here that once you get to the tip, look at the tip compared to the size of my finger. So that kisaki is pretty much the same, less than the size of my digit. So this is a pretty cool sword. I like this. Also, the spine is called marumune. It's a rounded mune. So, but if you're talking about shortest, that's another story. So shortest is, let's see, some people would probably call this a dagger more than a sword, but by Japanese qualifications, it is technically a sword. And so it is the Osaku Tanto. So you can see this one is like a very thin, small one. Let's see. If you had to fight a duel and you could only take one sword from the room you are in now, which am I grabbing? In an arena so swing space is not a problem. I would have to go, I'm going to go for durability, but sadly, so that would mean, and the thing I'm best at is Jian. Actually, the best thing I'm at is actually Wing Chun butterfly swords. So it would have to be this one. I'm not saying I'm actually good at Wing Chun butterfly swords, but I do have a pair here. So this is kind of what I would go for. Just because that's what I'm the most trained in fighting with. I mean, I have trained in Kenjutsu, I have trained in Tien, but I'm not particularly good at them. From a martial perspective, I've always been much more interested in open-handed stuff like boxing and BJJ and stuff like that. So, I am new to swords entirely for Japanese swords. What are the ranges of weights? Ranges of weights. Probably about, if you look at a katana, usually about 1.5 pounds to 2.5 pounds. Sometimes you get some really buff cutters that are more, but the average is probably about 2 pounds plus change. Do they have one-handed katana? Yes, they do. There were oftentimes, and you wouldn't necessarily, okay, so it was called a katate katana, and so they would use it, they were for one-handed use, but yeah. Let's see. Nice choice, Warrior O Katana for me all the way. I'm a broken record, I know. Hey, whatever you love to work with, whatever you feel comfortable with, that's what you go with. Yeah, Kodachi, yeah, Chisa Katana. There's also a Katate Katana, and then also the Kodachi. Kodachi is kind of like katana length. It's like the very bare minimum. Like katana are considered to be 2 shaku, or about 24 inches long, and a kodachi is roughly 20 to 24 inches long, and it was paired with a tachi. So tachi are like court swords, or also battlefield swords. So here's one of my favorites that I have. This is one. This is the phoenix head, and so this is the sort of thing you would wear to like the emperor's birthday or something like that. But this one is a gorgeous sword. You can see how much bling this particular sword has. But tachi are usually worn blade down like this, and displayed blade down. And so a kodachi would be its companion sword, or short sword that's used. Yeah. This one actually, well, let me show you the blade. This one has a gorgeous blade as well. It has what's called a 3-color polish, folded steel, sanmai construction. It's just a gorgeous sword. So, once again, my camera really does not bring out the details in the steel, but it has a lot of character to it. Let's just say that. This one never wants to go back. I have to adjust this one a few times. It never goes back super smoothly. This one has a companion sword to it. Basically, it's Phoenix is paired with a dragon. So this is the dragon version. So the dragon tachi. I'm going to switch the sageo. I don't really like the sageo. I'm getting one from Japan, like a Japanese silk sageo, which is going to cost me like $80. But it'll make this sword so not that much better. Let's see. Too fancy for me. Give me simple and deadly over fancy and flimsy any day. This isn't flimsy. It's not a flimsy sword. It's just fancy. But hey, you do you. What would be your preferred Japanese sword and metal for a hypothetical zombie apocalypse? I'm going for an S5 shock steel sword. And we just got a lot in. We got like, I think 12 of them in yesterday from Cloudhammer. 6 of them are already sold. So S5 shock steel, it's really a tough steel. And we're going to start really pushing those because I'm getting even more of them in the next couple of days. Your videos are fire. Thank you, Kids Bankston. Phoenix Tachi, I mean. Yeah, I mean, no, the Phoenix Tachi is still a very highly functional sword. It's a very decent blade. So it's still a very functional sword. It's just got a lot of bling. Is katana work associated with a martial art, or is it its own form of practice? So, how to answer that? That's a very broad question. But usually the katana was the sidearm of the samurai, and there are many traditional martial arts that use the katana. And then several martial arts have adapted the katana later, like a lot of people who do karate or taekwondo have adopted the katana as well. Do you have an odachi? Yes, I do. Are blades always displayed the way they are worn? Generally speaking, yes. I've learned 5 new things already since the start of this, and thank you. Let's see. What are different metals do in terms of a blade outside the process of making it? I mean, different steels are better for different purposes. So I'm not sure if that answers the question or what exactly you're asking. Anyone need an S5 test? I'm looking for my first review sample for the channel. They're very expensive for me, so it's very hard for me to justify sending them. Sorry about that, Outlaw, but they are S5 is just like insanely expensive. Can you cut an apple out without moving? An apple. We don't like to cut fruits with our swords because the acids can damage the polish. Love you spread so much correct information. I try at least, seeing as there is so much misinformation there. Thank you. What would be a practical sword to use in a zombie apocalypse? I keep on saying the S5 shock steel. If you go to cloudhammerforge.com, you'll see our S5 shock steel katana. They usually go at $675 and up. But if you follow Shad Diversity here on YouTube, he did a review of one of our S5 katana, and he was hitting it up against rock. And the rock was chipping, but the sword was totally fine. So that gives you an idea of how tough S5 shock steel is. Let's see, the odachi. Oh yeah, so let's go back to the odachi. So I have 2 odachi here. I have 3 odachi actually. This one is from Legacy Blades, which is a family of smiths from China. This one has a scorpion popping off of the tsuba. And it is very long at 34 inches. It's a pretty long blade. I'm 6 feet tall, if that gives you an idea of perspective. So this is my smallest odachi. Let's see. And then this is my next smallest odachi, though this is in tachi fittings. So this one is 39 inches long, 39-inch long blade length. Harder to get out of its scabbard. This one, Cloudhammer only made 3 of. It's made of folded steel and clay tempered. So a traditional method of making swords. And I'm gonna get to your questions, by the way, people. I'm just sort of falling behind on it. And this one, I really like these fittings as well. These are the Sakura fittings. And so that is the next largest one. And here's our monster. This is our monster odachi. This one, the blade length is 48 inches long. You can see I put this on the floor. It comes up to here on me. I wish this had a longer handle, but I have cut with it, and it did cut. And I hate taking it out because getting it back in is always a challenge without stabbing myself. But you can see how huge this blade is. I'm standing like 7 feet away from the camera right now. One of the things about these long swords is they tend to bend under their own weight, but since the steel they use, this one is sub 12, this one's not sagging at all. You can see that there's no saggage whatsoever. But it's still very flexible. It's a spring steel. I always hate putting this back in. I'm always sort of concerned about stabbing myself. Let's see. Okay. So sharpness, someone asked to see sharpness, and I like to show off the Osaraku Wakizashi for sharpness. So this is the Osaraku Wakizashi. I've already did some cutting, but here we are. It's pretty sharp. Let's see. What is the black one at the top? You mean this one up here? That is a Ming Dynasty style sword. A Ming Dynasty style sword. Nodachi versus Odachi. They're pretty much the same thing, just different ways of saying it, different kanji. Nodachi means field sword, Odachi means a great sword. But really, they just go between the two. Let's see. How much are that all? So the Odachi, right now for sale, we only have that huge Odachi, and we have 3 of them left for $800. They used to be $850, but we cut the price down because right now all we have is display models. What sword were you to pick up against a club, a sturdy stick, or a metal bar? Probably an S5 shock steel sword because I know it would survive. Let's see. That's a pretty massive thing to go up against. How much did you give for them? How much did I give for what? That's a spear with a 12-inch handle. Yeah. Is Tamahagane superior to shock steel? Oh, far superior. Far superior. Tamahagane, from a functional, practical point of view, Tamahagane is very poor quality. The durability is very, very low with Tamahagane. Because you have to think about Tamahagane is a very unscientific way of making steel. And nowadays, we have industrial processes that can make amazing steel. So even like some of the lamest things that I would, many of us would consider to be lame steel for a sword would outperform Tamahagane. It's just because of modern industrial processes. However, Tamahagane is gorgeous. It's really pretty. What's the longsword for? For engaging people on horseback. Let's see. 1055 don't rust easily. It does stain, but nothing a bit of auto polish. I did not know that, Outlaw Samurai. I guess the carbon content is too low for it to really, yeah. Can you say that wakizashi 5 times fast? Wakizashi, wakizashi, wakizashi. Let's see. Or is that 3 times? What is your opinion on the sakabato? It's fun, I guess. It's a nice concept. How much did you give for them all? I don't get what you're asking. All the samurai gear just to be killed by my Glock 19s. You're assuming, Officer Pip, that I don't have a firearm too. So hey, people can collect what they collect, and whatever makes them happy makes them happy. Let's see, John. We need a cutting video with the Jingum. So Space Ghost, I do have a video, Shandon. So yeah, I do have a video. Just if you scroll down, you'll see me cutting with the Jingum. So let's see. Let's see. The longsword, the heaviest I own. No, the longsword's actually quite light. Or do you mean the European style longsword or the one that's very long? Because that is pretty heavy. I want to see that top sword on the rack. I can do that. This one is a functional Damascus Ming Dynasty style sword. So it has like this braided wrap, and it is made of Damascus. It has a double fuller, and check out the tip on this guy. So, so do you own a Naginata? No, I do. I have not. I did see the Blue Eyed Samurai. It's a fun. It's let's just say the storytelling is great, and the characters are compelling. But it's kind of like, to me, it's like Solo in Star Wars. It's like I would love that movie if it wasn't about Han Solo. And same thing, Blue Eyed Samurai. If it was just like a fantasy story, I would love it. But since it's about Japan at a specific time in Japan, it's very hard for me to suspend my disbelief. Let's see. Thank you for answering questions. I'm an RVA native and hope to come in soon. Yeah, heck yeah, come visit us. Let's see. Officer Pimp, don't know samurai use both swords and guns. So John with a blade and Glock just gonna spin you. Yeah, it's not worth engaging, Outlaw. There are all these people who always come in, and when we are live streaming, we're live streaming our practice, and they're always like saying like, why don't you use a gun? It's like, we do have guns. Like, we have guns. People, it doesn't mean we can't have fun with swords too, right? I don't see why people make such a big fuss about it. So anyway, what's the best steel for real world use against zombies? For zombies, if I were using it, I would have won S5 shock steel. Let's see. Who makes katanas and swords for you? Well, I work with actually five different forges, and so they all make swords for me. It really depends on what I'm looking for. Like for Phoenix Arms, I'm trying to go for like pretty swords, like really interesting hamon, interesting furniture. So that's what I'm looking with Phoenix Arms. For Cloudhammer, I'm looking for like beautiful swords and super highly functional swords. Moritaka, I'm looking for like sort of a budget cutter. So there are a lot of people I work with, and for different reasons. Let's see. I'm learning to forge right now and made a tanto. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, S5 shock steel. I don't have a shock steel katana with me here. Actually, I have two downstairs. I probably should have brought one. But I do have some shock steel bastard swords, hand and a half swords, and an arming sword here. So these are, yeah, they're super durable swords. Once again, if you look at Chad Diversity here on YouTube, he took one of our S5 swords. He was like hitting a car door. He was trying to stab through a car door. He hit a bolt in the car door, and it didn't even bend the sword. So it's a really nice sword. What's the difference with shock steel? It's just the alloys in it make it very durable. And so shock steels are usually used for like jackhammers and high impact die. Can we see the sword behind me with the wooden sheath? Like at the top, I just showed it. Let's see. How many Japanese swords and overall swords do you own? So I don't technically own any of them. My business owns them, and my business owns about 600 or 700 swords actually. Oftentimes I'm broadcasting from home, or sorry, from my shop, and you can see all the swords we have there. Right here are the ones at home, which are sort of my higher end swords. Only someone with zero combat experience would make comments like Officer Ping chooses to someone else the skill and training can make blades against modern firearms. It's about tactics. This is true, Ghost, but it's also, I think it's just a huge oversight among some people. Seriously, we always have people come in, it's like, why do you have swords when you can have guns? It's like, why can't I have both? So anyway. Let's see. It would be on my left. Oh, so you mean this one? Do you mean the one on the top? I showed this one earlier too, but I can never stop showing this. I love this. This is my favorite sword. It is 82.5 centimeters blade length long. This is the Shida saya. This is the protective saya that keeps it protective. It's not a battle mount, so you couldn't really use this. But this is my favorite sword. It is a tachi. Very long, very curved. I'm going to put it on my midline so you can see how curved that is. So it's a very massive sword. And this one is anywhere between 650 and 800 years old. The blade, not the Shida saya. Let's see. How much do you sell shock steel sword from low to high? So our shock steel swords, basically the S5 goes for $675, and if it has higher end fittings and better fittings, it'll go up a little bit. Let's see. What is the favorite I own? I just showed it. Let's see. Gun guys just say I got to shoot you once, but two things you have to hit me. Yeah, and once again, you have to assume I don't have a gun myself, right? People. Anyway, a as Clint Smith of Thunder Ranch fame has said, swords don't run out of ammo. This too. Also at close range, basically, if we were this close, like a few feet away, I'd rather have a knife than a gun. Uh, Knives are much more versatile at close range. But like I say, I'd rather have both. Wouldn't the blade being so large make it harder to be mobile? Yes. There are sacrifices. That kind of blade, that long big blade, was usually used from horseback, so you could swing at people who were down below you, like infantry people, while you were on your horse. So that's why you wanted this long curved blade. The curvature, if you look at most cavalry sabers, they tend to be very curved. So yeah, I actually have one that's even more curved. This is I got this sword actually. I just acquired it to sell, but I kind of like it a lot. This one has my deepest curve. This is a 600-year-old sword. I'm going to put it on my midline, and you can see how far it curves off to the side. The curvature is 3.9 centimeters. So this is like the most deeply curved sword that I have ever seen from an antique. Let's see. Reaper says, do you have a kodachi? I think that's how you say it. I don't have any kodachi here. Actually, I don't have any kodachi. Yeah, I don't have any kodachi. I have had kodachi, but I don't have any right now. As a SF person, I know he would rather have a blade over a pistol at close range. A person can grab and stop a pistol, but can you grab a knife blade? You can grab it with your guts. No, yeah. Basically, a pistol, a firearm is very one dimensional, one directional. So at a longer range, that's great. But once you get in close, then yeah, there are definitely limitations. So, yeah. Really, a sword that matches the saying "Saya, goodbye for your kneecaps." Chuckle. I have no idea what that means. Let's see. What's the oldest sword you have? Is that it? The most curved one? No. This one's only about 600 years. Only 600 years. Versus, excuse me. This one is at least 650 years old and possibly 800 years old. I just showed it a moment ago. And this one is at least 700 years old and possibly 1,000 years old. So this is the closest thing I have to a kodachi, by the way. Let's see. How good for armor against swords during the ages? Armor in general is very good against swords. It does depend on what kind of armor we're talking about, but generally speaking, armor, swords were usually a sidearm. They weren't your primary weapon. And so usually people would prefer a pole arm like a spear, and those tend to work better against armor. So swords were not really necessarily, they were more status symbols and your last resort weapon. Do you have any European style swords? Any kind, area, time period? Yeah, I think I showed them earlier, but I will show you a few that I have here. This is a Cloudhammer SX105V longsword. This is our loaner that we sent to the Queen's Gambit competition, and we can send it to any HEMA competition for cutting. So this is a longsword from Cloudhammer. And here's an S5 shock steel arming sword from Cloudhammer. This one isn't a great design. They welded a bolt onto the end of the tang and screwed on the pommel, versus a lot of them are peened. A lot of Cloudhammers are peened, which are better, but this was not a great design. This is also S5 shock steel. Excuse me. And this is an S5 arming sword. So you can see at the very end that little bolt here. This one is peened, so it is a better sword from a European standpoint. So those are the 3 European swords I have here. They're all Cloudhammers. Let's see. Do you have any Ninjato? No. We have it at the shop. We have a Sasuke replica at the shop. We actually just sold one today. We have the white and the black one. So if you go to our website, rvakatana.com, you'll see it there. I don't have them here, though. Only martial artists like you know what is best weapon for what fight. You're storing them wrong. Oh, one of those people. How am I storing them wrong? Please tell me. 1,000-year-old sword. How cool. Yeah, it is. I always love when people think they know that I'm storing my swords wrong. Are swords better than muskets for home defense? Muskets are very limited in terms of how many times you could fire, but you could also fix a musket with a bayonet, and that gives it a lot of versatility. Let's see. I carry a gun as primary second, but my third is a tanto. Very good. If I were to buy a sword with only a shirasaya, do you know any way for me to acquire fittings outside of Japan? Yeah, I mean, you can get them from Japan. You can get non-Japanese fittings. So there are a lot of ways you can get fittings. Do you have any other Dragonfly themed katana? Yes, Michael Kiko. Go to our website, rvakatana.com, and look up Dragonfly, and you'll see tons. Let's see. I hate screwed on pommels. Hello, new here. Welcome, Letitia. Gun fu beats sword no matter what puts. You know, I've been practicing kung fu for going on 30 years, and open hand against a sword, I would be very, very hesitant. You know, swords are pretty dangerous weapons, especially if you are unarmed. Luckily, I live near York, UK. We have many shops selling such swords in history. That's pretty cool. The cutting edge of the blade should never be down. Joshua Grulin, watch some of my videos. There are definitely, you know, this is basically an urban legend. I mean, if you think about it, number one, if your sword fits really well inside the scabbard, it's not touching the inside of the blade. That's number one. Number two, just sitting there, it's not going to dull the blade and it's not going to cut through. It's only when you actually draw, and if you drew the edge across that, that would happen. But if it's just sitting there, nothing is going to happen. Like, what about double-edged swords? People store double-edged swords. You can't store it unless you're storing it vertically. So, Joshua Golan, you are wrong. And also, there are Japanese swords that they're definitely stored edge down. Sorry, had to go through that. People are always saying that. It kind of drives me nuts to a certain point. Oh, another gun person. Do you store your sword other than the way you have them? Maybe they should be in a safe locked up so you can't see them or play with them, right? Let's see. In a real fight, I hope you own a gun. Oh, it's one of those people. Yes, we do have a gun. Jeez. Yes, I have a gun. I don't know why people think that just because I have swords, I don't have guns too. Come on, people. We get it, gay for guns. We get it. We get it. Yes. Actually, an Glock does not beat a sword if you're up close. Just saying. But at a range, definitely. And you just, once again, you're assuming that we don't have guns. People. First time here. I love the information you're making available. Thank you. A sword is better than nothing. Oh, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, we get all kinds of people who come in, and one of the ones that irks me is the people who say with so much confidence that the blade you should never store your blades edge down. And yeah, you can tell that's the Tokyo National Museum and the various national museums of Japan, which are storing their tachi edge down because that's the way they're meant to be. And then the other group is the gun people who say, oh, you should use a gun. It's like, we do use guns. Jesus Christ. It really cracks me up that they assume we don't have guns. So anyway, can you showcase your gun? Let's see. Can you showcase your high-end, your shop high-end blades? Well, I'm not at the shop right now, but if I'm at the shop, I could do that. But I'm not at the shop right now. Hey, all things considered, I'd rather have a blade within 10 feet over a firearm. I'd go for like 5 feet. You know, at 10 feet, I still give the firearm an advantage. Is there a way to sharpen a carrot to let it become a sword? I mean, you could sharpen a carrot, but it wouldn't hold an edge for very long. Let's see. That's why they put bayonets on guns. They put bayonet. I don't think they put bayonets on many guns these days. Rifles, sure, but on a gun, it doesn't really do you a whole lot of good except for ruin the balance of your weapon. Let's see. Can you guys send out notification next time you go live? I don't actually know how to do that. I just go live and see what happens. Maybe I'll look into seeing how to do that. Let's see. Imagine breaking into a house with a man with so many swords in the first place. Once again, you have to get past my guns and the poison gas. Did your live stream wind up in my YouTube Shorts feed? I have no idea. So let's see. Guns are high maintenance swords. Okay. The superior thing to do, obviously, is to put the entire sword in front of you. Glock, obviously. About Tsuba, there is brass Tsuba, iron Tsuba, etc. Which do you prefer? Jeffrey Ho, I'm a big fan of bling, so I like brass. I like brass with lots of color on them. I'm trying to see if I have one here. I say that, and I don't actually have one. But yeah, I'm a big fan of. Oh, here it is. Here, check out this tachi here. So I like this kind with lots of bling. But that's for display. I mean, you have display and then you have functional things that you use, and they're different ones. Let's see. K for guns. You obviously, I'm wondering how much you actually know about guns. I mean, seriously, if I'm pointing at you right here with a gun and you happen to step to the side and control my hand, are you still going to hit me with a gun? What if once again I'm pointing at a gun, you have a knife, and I'm pointing at you right here, and we're this close. You can take my gun to the side and you can use your knife and stab me. Just saying. Gun only goes one direction. Knives can go a lot of different directions. Just saying. Let's see. I flexed to my friends my big sword that looked realistic. I was fun for my cousin, had a wooden blade. That's awesome. Among Canadian police, a blade is considered a lethal threat if the wielder is within 21 feet. Kingfisher, I think that's also what they say in the United States too. Basically, someone can close to a certain distance before you could actually draw and shoot, depending on all things in average. Once again, let's see. Oh, and by the way, Kingfisher is in the house. Follow him if you want to see some excellent cutting. PVC Saya's thoughts. I don't know a whole lot about them. I know that some people are doing it. So let's see. How much is my most expensive sword? The most expensive one here is $15,000. Thoughts about using a kokatana to practice iaido when ceiling is too low for full katana. I don't see why not. I mean, but even here, the ceiling is too low for a kokatana as well. Let's see. Would you ever consider getting a newly forged katana from a swordsmith in Japan for cultural purposes? No. And there's nothing wrong. I mean, there is something to be said about the art, but that's just not my interest. If I was going to spend like $5,000 on a sword, which is your bare minimum for getting a sword from Japan, from a modern swordsmith, I'd rather get an antique because there is a history behind it. Versus this, yeah, I'm not particularly interested in modern shinsakuto. And people say, yeah, you need to keep the art alive. Let other people do it. That's just not for me. But, you do you. Where can I buy S5 steel? Go to our website, rvakatana.com. Let's see. Gay for guns. If you happen to be in Richmond, Virginia, I'll get a play knife. You get a squirt gunner or whatever, and we'll see how many times you can, at close range, you can squirt me before I slash various parts. We can test this out. And this is also, I'm not in great shape. I'm a 52-year-old man who is not in great shape. But at close range, once again, we can play with this. All in the name of fun. Are you trained swordsman? I'm not. I'm trained, but not necessarily trained. So, gay for guns. If you don't like swords, why are you hanging out here? Go find another channel. Enjoy those channels. Find a gun channel and have fun with your fellow homosexuals. Whatever. I don't know why you waste your time here. Are you an Iaito or Kendo practitioner? Iaito. So I practice Kenjutsu, which has aspects of Iaito in it. So, for example, I'm going to use a anime sword because it's So we'll practice stuff. And the sheathing. Technically, when we sheathe, there's a whole process. You don't put it in. You just take your time, slowly. Yeah. When you draw a sword, you remove the scabbard from the sword. You don't take the sword from the scabbard. All these various things. So yes, we do practice, but we're not into it. Let's see. Every time, even if I get... Once again, gay for guns, why are you still here? Why are you still here? You're cracking me up, man. Uh, oh, yeah. It's okay, Steve. Let him waste his time if he wants to hang here and just and talk. But once again, gay for guns, I have guns too. So I have a gun, and once I get close enough, I have a knife. And seriously, once we're this close, my knife will take out your gun. That's just physics. And once again, I'm a 50-some-year-old man. I'm not particularly fast, not particularly strong, but I mean that's what happens when you go one dimension. Let's see. That guy's a basement dweller. Yeah. Let's see. Is a bastard better than a basic sword? I mean, I think that depends on how well you are trained. Let's see. Have you ever the Zatoichi challenge? I'm not even sure what that is. Is that trying to be like blind or no? Let's see. Is a medium length. Okay, please do a low stance with a sword, please. Looks so cool. A low stance? Like like wakikage. Yeah, I don't look good doing it. I have very bad knees. I'm old. The most amusing bit of this interchange is that I would rather get shot instead of stabbed. It hurts less. I have never been shot, but I have been cut by a knife. It's not fun. You're right. I've also been cut by my own swords way too many times when cleaning them. Um, that's where he does a super quick flick and return the katana to the scabbard. Oh, you're talking. Let's see if I can like that, right? So yeah, yeah, super quick flick. Always fun to play around with. Of course, it helps. This is a wooden sword and super light. Let's see. I'm a gun guy, but I've never been more scared of a weapon than a razor sharp longsword. There's some kind of primordial thing there. There are certain things too, like spiders and snakes. You get that primordial fear going on. Actually, spiders don't bother me, neither do snakes. But there are certain things that sort of, eat at our very basic instincts. Name me a country for an edit. I have no idea what that means. I'm glad I came across your live. I bookmarked your shop. I'll be buying some stuff. Awesome. Thank you, lazy boy. Let's see. What are your thoughts on reverse grip cuts, John? I have tried some. I am not particularly good at them, but I haven't practiced a whole lot. For me, the katana was just so hard and unwieldy. You will see Mark, he is Mountain Stream Swordsman, who is in our shop, who works in our shop. He used a reverse hand grip. Uh, let's see. Have you ever cut myself with an iaito? No, but my teacher has. He stabbed himself. Uh, my friend said he didn't feel when he got shot. Took a few minutes for the pain to start. Actually, that happened to me with a sword one time. I actually was a sword slipped out of its thing and it cut me. I didn't even realize it cut me. It was so sharp until people are like, "You're bleeding." Like, oh wow. So yeah. The other cool thing about a cut that I got one time. Someone's talking about a trip to the ER. Oh, it's Smika talking about a trip to the ER. I actually cut myself with a sword one time across my finger. Went to the ER and they was like the doctor was like that was the cleanest cut he had ever seen in his life. I'm like, that was pretty cool. So yeah, and once again, same thing. I didn't even realize I cut myself. It was so sharp. But that's once again slicing across something versus getting stabbed inside an organ. It's a different type of thing. Can you explain why katana cut only when slicing and not when applying pressure directly on the blade? Tony, they do cut when applying pressure on the blade. Um, they definitely cut. Odds, any advice for guys with short blades that fight long blademen? Once again, that's not my, okay, actually, that is kind of my skill set because I practice Wing Chun with Wing Chun butterfly swords. And so basically it is stay out of range until you have a chance to get in close. And once you're in close, you neutralize some of their benefits. Not that I'm good at that, mind you, but at least in theory, that's what we go for. Let's see. Dude, I've been shot. It wasn't anywhere near as painful as getting stabbed. Man, that's something. Yaito still have pointy kisaki. Yes, this is true. Let's see. Knows how to do the Demon Slayer Zenitsu maneuver, like doing things in your sleep? Gay for Guns is still talking. The odds learn to bond and grapple for disarm your opponent. The Filipino military uses them too. Yeah. Well, yeah. My Ujihusa tasted blood. Blade sip when I was removing the ska. Blade right into the thumb. Didn't realize until I saw the blood. Steve, did you finally cut yourself on one of your swords? Wow. Okay. Lol Doc with unlikely sword compliment. Oh, I'm a victim of misinformation. Ha ha ha. What is the laugh you lose test? Oh, okay. I want to order a sword from you guys. What's the best between practice and mats? So if you're looking for a good entry-level sword, look at our Moritaka, Moritaka, Moritaka 9260. It's a very good beginner sword if that's where you're at. Basically, it's a spring steel, and so they do not get damaged as easily on bad cuts. How can you disarm your opponent? Disarm them of what? And there's, once again, theory and practice. Just subscribe. Thank you, Rufus. Gay for Guns is still here. I'm going off performers, walking on them, and then still showcasing the blade cutting. I suppose it's just props. In World War II, what kind of steel were the Type 95 and 98 Gunto blades from? So they were using, I'm actually not exactly sure what kind of steel it was. And they used, a lot of the gunto had different styles of blades too. So for example, I have this gunto here, and this one was actually a family blade. The owner of the sword probably came from samurai stock, and so he had a family sword. And then it was mounted in gunto fittings. So check out this guy, check out the hamon on this one. It's a really pretty sword. I want to get this one evaluated to see if it actually has any value to it. Or rather, it has value, but to see if it was made by anybody important. So, and then you also had some that were made of railway steel. And then, like the Navy uses stainless steel. In Manchuria, they use like a Manchurian railway steel. So that's pretty cool. Do you use a gun? Yes. I don't practice enough with the gun. I don't do enough shooting, but yes. Let's see. T10 for 9260 for hitting things with the blunt edge. The 9260 for real. Like T10, because they're clay tempered, they're more likely to bend and stick a bend. Let's see. 510, you can use a pretty standard size sword if that's the case. Let's see. Any wooden trading swords advice? Talk. Tengu is here. Kingfisher is here. They could answer that question better than I can because that's not my expertise. Let's see. Insanity Pepper was made from railroad tracks scavenged from Chinese railroads with an iron core. Yeah. It really depends because they made a lot of different type of gunto. Some were machine made and oil quenched, and some were traditionally made. It was hard to say. Let's see. Damascus is a misnomer. Damascus is a term people use for pattern welded steel, where they take different types of steel and fold them together. Family blade is beautiful. Imagine the history. I imagine all the time. Don't get me started on Damascus. Oh yeah. Don't get Tengu started on Damascus. He gave me a very long lecture one time in person. Any combat marks on your older swords? No. I did have a sword. Actually, Steve Hochberger has it now. I suspect it might have had a defensive wound on it. The Takata. You'll see it on the Shinogi line. There is a straight line. So possibly. Where do I live? So I can watch you live. I live in Richmond, Virginia, and we have a shop there. John, let us know when you start selling lightsabers. I will. Can't wait for that to happen. Let's see. Does the family blade have any markings? It does not, except for the gunto blades usually had markings on them, like certain codes. But other than that, it doesn't have a signature on it. The thing is that a lot of swords don't have signatures on them. Most of my antique swords don't have signatures on them, in fact. Let's see. Damascus is real alloy made in ancient Arabia. Yep. Have you ever thought to get more antique swords in the shop, certified? Hozon. No. Because that would require sending them back to Japan. So there are certain swords that we acquire that already have certificates, but we don't. We basically are acquiring antique swords more for just someone who wants an antique sword, like people who aren't experts. We have fair prices for just like a basic sword. They're an antique sword. We can tell you it's Edo period. We can tell you it's a Koto sword, but we don't necessarily know a whole lot about it. And so there are people who want those kinds of swords. John, have you ever seen a halberd or handled a World War I Japanese military saber? I have not. I don't know. Is it not good? I've seen some nice looking Damascus blades. Damascus, once again, is pattern welded steel, and it really depends on who's making it. Like Cloudhammer's Damascus, it's good cutters. They're good cutters. We've cut bamboo. They flex. They do pretty nicely. Do you have a shashka for sale? Yes, we do. We have Hanwei's civilian shashka, and we can get Hanwei's officer shashka as well. My katana was $4,000. It's made from Tamahagane steel. Let's see. Was it worth the price? It's sharper than a razor blade. That's awesome, beyond limits. And $4,000 for a Tamahagane sword, especially a new one, that's really good. Favorite historical blade, sword, knife, dagger? I'm not even sure. What's the difference between uchikatana and katana? Same thing. Do you have a machete? No. What's the most durable steel for a modern katana? The most durable we have is S5 shock steel. How that compares to Howard Clark's Bainite L6, I don't know. No, I don't think anyone has ever tried to bash one up against the other. We would definitely be willing to provide an S5 sword if anyone ever wanted to test that. But if you look at statistically, an L6 sword made of lower bainite is pretty tough, but S5 is technically tougher if you look at objective standards. But once again, it's all about the heat treatment, so it's very hard to say. So let's see. Do you recommend an antique sword for Tameshigiri or a new blade? Use a new blade. Like an antique sword, you're going to scuff the polish, you risk a bend. You know, appreciate your antique swords. I don't really recommend them for cutting. But I mean, your sword, you do what you want. My teacher Scott would definitely cut with swords, with his antique swords. He would cut with my antique swords if I let him, which I won't. Let's see. Favorite swordsmith, modern or historical? Probably Howard Clark. I mean, as much as I say S5 might be as tough as L6 Bainite, I still want an L6 Bainite sword, or lower Bainite sword, not upper Bainite. I have actually, here's an L6 upper Bainite sword. This one is made by Moritaka. One of the nice things about Bainite, or L6, is it really creates a very pretty hamon to it. Sort of a dark gray line in the knee particles. Let's see. Yeah, why risk an antique blade when a new blade can perform just as well, if not better? Is modern Chinese tamahagane as good as, say, 1600s Japanese tamahagane? Insanity pepper, that opens up a huge can of worms. But one of the interesting things about 1600s tamahagane is that it's theorized because a lot of these sword schools moved from place to place, and it had to do with access to quality iron. And so 1600, you're talking about at the end of the warring period, and the quality of swords at that time was not very good. Now, once you get past 1600 in the time of peace, then you start seeing an improvement again in the swords and also in the steel. So, yeah, modern day Chinese tamahagane, they're using orishigane, and I think that really varies. I would have a hard time saying that's one of the natures of tamahagane. It's not scientifically done, and so you really can't get consistent quality. Like it would not be the same thing, the exact same thing every single time. So who's to say what is better? Muramasa is my favorite smith. I'm gonna go with Masamune then. Shock steel is the coolest name for a steel. Yeah. Meiji era police blades are very interesting, along with Keishi Ryu and Jigen Ryu, which were taught along with them. That's pretty cool. What's a day night sword? I have no idea. Can you grab the Kingfisher? If you want to attend, let me know. I'm an hour away from Richmond. Kingfisher is in Winnipeg, so he's a ways away. Would you recommend to me, a noob, a sword quality looking for a nice utilitarian blade for the zombie apocalypse? Say I had $1,000 to spend. So Lazy Boy, if you want a sword for the zombie apocalypse, get one of our S5 shock steel swords. Go to cloudhammerforge.com. Now that said, if you're going to be cutting on a regular basis, start with a 9260 spring steel sword, just because start with a cheaper sword first. In the Sengoku era, they smuggled steel from China to Japan because it was higher quality. I didn't know that. That's cool. Is it better to buy a sword of war period because it is better, or is it hit or miss? Well, if you're talking about the war period in Japan, like especially the Sengoku period, like 1500 to 1600, they made so many swords, the quality is actually fairly low compared to the Kamakura period or the Shinto era, which is 1600 to like 1786. And then from 1786 until about 1868 is sort of like the heyday. That's the Shinto period. They're doing some amazing work. Let's see. Yeah, so war period, and once again, it really depends on who's making it. But in general, during the medieval warring period in Japan, the quality was a little lower, just because they were making so many. There are literally millions of swords that were made between 1500 and 1600. So I remember the first time I started posting videos online, someone's like, how come your 500-year-old sword is only $3,500? I was like, it's because there are a lot of them. A 500-year-old Japanese sword is nothing special. I mean, it's cool, but in terms of, it's not particularly rare. So, let's see. Beyond Limits. Authentic Nihonto Japanese katana longsword. Kane Zane Saku Gakume with MBTH Tokubetsu hose on blade. And overall is very good condition and normal signs of wear, scratches, scars. $12,000. Which are we talking about? Beyond Limits. That sounds pretty cool. Let's see. Do you have any antler style sword racks? I do not. No antler style sword racks. I don't actually even like those. I don't think they're that interesting personally. But hey, you do you. That's my motto. You know, if you want an anime sword, if it makes you happy, go for it. If you want an antique sword, if you go for it. Do you know what is better quality in a katana? Would it be D2 steel or T10, and how do they differ? D2 would be very bad for a katana. D2 is amazing for a knife because of its hardness, but D2 also makes a blade brittle, and so once you get into longer length like a sword, then D2 will crack easily. So the solution to that is ASAB. This is the company that makes K120C powder steel. They made ASAB 88. ASAB 88 is a variation of D2 steel. And this is my ASAB 88 zombie killer wide blade. And so it is actually more durable and has excellent edge retention. So an ASAB 88 is, those steels are going to be like your closest thing to D2 that you want to use as a sword. But D2, it's a knife steel, definitely. Let's see. Thanks for answering my questions. I'll catch you soon. Stay humble, friends. Let's see. Best self-defense sword? I think that depends on where you plan on defending yourself. Once again, gun first. Let's see. Blade made for war, a blade made for peace. What would you pick? Blades made in times of peace when the smiths have more time. I mean, actually? That's a very big question. I wouldn't even know where to start. You have to give me more conditions than that. Let's see. Do you ship to the UK? No. Sorry, we cannot. Unless it's an antique. I saw the Clawhammer S5 Black Lotus swords were fitted incorrectly and won't ship until December. Would it be possible to swap my order? Yes. Bellship, if you... So they basically have gold, sort of yellowish bronze, or sorry, yellow brass tsuba. And we're getting 6 of them immediately. And then after that, we're going to get the black ones. And then we do have some more S5 shock steel swords that came in Bellship. So contact me if you want something else, and we can swap things out. Or we can refund you, whichever you prefer. Let's see. Loving that zombie killer. Awesome. Best self-defense sword in a house. I would go for a shorter sword, like a wakizashi, an arming sword, a machete, something shorter that you can use in hallways, multi-purpose. But once again, use your gun first. Let's see, a blade made to fight in war or a blade made to wear in a noble court. Well, in that case, a blade to fight in a war. Well, I actually, that depends. Do you mean to collect or to use? Is it worth paying $12,000 for a 600-year-old Japanese katana? Beyond limits, it depends. I mean, there's just so much that goes into evaluating a sword. So I've paid $12,000 for a 650-year-old Japanese sword, but that's because I wanted. This is what I wanted. And it really depends on the condition. There are a lot of things that go into it. I would say contact Racinger or swordsofjapan.com, and he would give you a better evaluation. Let's see. I'm from Brazil. Can you send a shout out to Ana Lu, please? Hey, Ana Lu. Beyond limits depends on the maker. Yeah, the maker, the condition, the length. There's a lot of factors that go into the price of the sword. So there are $600 swords. I've gotten a $600 sword for like $3,000 before. So yeah, let's just go there. Let's see. I wish Japan was allowed to make modern steel swords to export to U.S. customers. It would be profitable business for them. So Insanity Pepper, there is someone who is doing that. But that said, Japanese smiths are trained in heat treating tamahagane. Doesn't necessarily mean they would know how to heat treat modern steels. So, I mean, and they probably still charge you an arm and a leg. So, yeah. Let's see. Is a stab better than a slash or a chop? If so, did katana never become like rapiers? Is a stab better than a slash or a chop? I think it's whatever is available to you. You know, you can stab with a katana, you can slash with a katana, you can chop with one. They are versatile. So you still can have tip control with a katana even though it's curved. Let's see. Yeah, Tokensho. Honestly, I mean, and this is me personally, zero interest. Zero interest. If I'm getting a modern day sword, why am I going to spend thousands of dollars for it when I can get like an awesome sword from like Motahara for much less? Let's see. Yugen sword, pepper Yugen swords is there America's? Yeah, Yugen. That's Christopher Osborne, amazing polisher. Shobu can stab well. Mongolian armor piercer. Yeah, Shobu is a really cool. Do I have a Shobu here? I don't have a Shobu. We have a Shobu at the shop, but we don't have a Shobu here. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, Mongolian armor piercer. That's a very interesting thing because up until the Mongol invasion, the tachi was the weapon of choice. But then the Mongol invasion forced, because the Japanese did not do very well. They were able to hold off the invasion before the typhoon hit, but they did not do very well against Mongol armor. So it caused a rapid advancement in Japanese swords. So Masamune, he basically took the lessons of the Mongol. He basically created swords that would go up against Mongol armor. That's sort of his claim to fame. Let's see. What would you choose between Tamahagane and T10 steel? Lagodia for what? In terms of actual cutting, T10 all the way. For cutting. For beauty, Tamahagane all the way. So, let's see. How do you source antique katanas? I work with several dealers in Japan. John, if we need a sword sharpened, have you found more than one shop that does this for a reasonable price? I would be interested. So Kevin, we have two sharpeners that work with us. They're not polishers, so technically a katana should be polished to sharpness. But if you don't mind having a slight secondary bevel, we can actually get them sharpened really, really well. So one of the guys, one of my sensei's students, he sharpened my sensei's S5 swords, and now they just fly through mats. They fly through bamboo. They're really good. Chikuzen no Kami Nobuhide swordsmith, 1860s. I don't know antique swords are not my forte. I couldn't answer that. Which of your swords would you grab if your house was burning down and you only had time for one? My $15,000 one. This one. So. Let's see. What would you sell me if I walked in your shop and just wanted something to have for practice with and build my sword skill? I would sell you either a 9260 or a stainless steel Iaito. Those are kind of a good starter swords. Spear or sword, which is better? Spear, all the way, much more versatile. Though that also depends on environment. But in general, the spear, like Chinese martial arts, we say the spear is the king of weapons. But spears are more versatile. Let's see. Did kamikaze pilots have death poems written on their bodies? Were they given amphetamines for their missions? I don't know. Let's see. Yes. Yugen Swords has a massive backlog. I'm trying to get him to polish one of my swords because I'm trying to get it identified. Yeah. What Kingfisher said, Iaito could be very worthwhile. It's a good starter sword. I have a nice T10 katana that needs sharpened. Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind a slight secondary bevel, which you won't even notice, we could definitely do that. We get he charges like 50 excuse me, $50. So hypothetically, if there's a zombie apocalypse and I have to kill 1 million zombies over the next 10 years, which sword will hold up? S5 shock steel, or even 51 CRV4. Thor, I do have insurance separately. Let's see. What's the one with the red wrapped handle? It looks really nice. So it comes out orange in this lighting, but it's actually kind of a red. But this is the gold. This is the red plum, made by Heaven and Earth. We sell a lot of these swords, and they are beautiful. They cut really nicely. They are T10 clay tempered swords. I'm trying to catch the hum on mine there, but not doing a great job. Go to RVAKatana.com and you will see the red plum. Hello from Argentina. My oldest sword is 650. I have two that are roughly the same age. Any thoughts on zinc Iaito swords? I am not particularly interested because they are, well, if you're going to be doing a lot of drawing, they're good because they're light. You're not going to tire yourself out as much. But if you want something that's fairly close to like an actual sword, then get a stainless steel or a spring steel sword. Do I need a specific length for Moritaka 9260 if 5'10"? The Moritaka are basically 27.5 is fine. if if you are training under a teacher, see what your teacher says. But in general, a standard 27.5 is perfect for 5'10". Bro, you 100%, I missed that comment. Bro, you 100% right about blades, but imagine the way you move your body with a, oh, he's still talking about guns. Ignore. If you are out of a certain blade, how possibly is it to get another one? Which one are you talking about, Michael Kegel? Let's see. I'm 5'10.5". Are you giving yourself an extra half inch, John? So Tengu 190, once again, don't listen to him because he likes long swords. John, Tengu 190 is totally, he is totally compensating for something. He always asks for long swords. So don't ask your own teacher first. And if not, 27.5 is totally fine. Let's see. Jade Dragonfly. Oh, that will be a very hard one to get a hold of. But we could get one that was similar. Like we could have one refitted. Okay, people. I have to go. I need to go cycle a little bit, try to work out, try to work off my belly. Because once again, being 52 years old, it doesn't come off as easily as it used to. So I'm going to shut this down. So once again, thank you all for joining in. And you can check us out at rvakatana.com. Outlaw Samurai, contact me about payment plans. Basically, we can talk about it, but contact me directly. Oyasumi nasai. Yes, thank you. Good night. Oh, the gun guy. Yeah, good night, man. All right, see you guys later.